Welcome to the May 4th meeting for the Mobile City Planning Commission. I would like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. This meeting is divided into two sessions, the public hearing session and deliberation session. In the public hearing session, an agenda item will be called, an applicant makes their presentation, commission members ask questions, and members of the public make their comments to the commission. It is a reminder that only 4 people may speak for an agenda item and 4 people against an agenda item. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. At the 1 minute remaining point, you will hear a warning bell or a beep prompting you to summarize your comments. After opposition speakers have finished, an applicant is allowed a 2-minute rebuttal. If you do intend to speak, come to the podium at the bottom of the stairs, speak into the microphone, and please provide your name and address for the record. Direct all your comments to the commission only and not to the applicant, to the staff, or to the audience. After hearing all applications, commission then goes into deliberation of each agenda item, where we will discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. We will then vote on each application, and the results of the voting can be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise during deliberation that were not addressed in the public hearing, we have the discretion to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues in order to resolve them, or we can ask for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, a commissioner may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. A recusal does not mean the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant. However, depending on the circumstances, ethical rules may require a recusal even if there is only the slightest appearance of conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead. The Planning Commission makes final decisions on subdivisions with appeals of these decisions to the Circuit Court. The Planning Commission is strictly recommending body for rezonings, conditional use permits, and planned unit developments. The City Council makes the final decision on these applications. All appeals of the City Council decisions are to the Circuit Court. At this time, please turn off your cell phones and electronic devices or turn them to silent. Commissioners and staff, please turn on your microphones when speaking. I'll call the roll. Myself, Jay Stubbs, present. Mr. Alan Cameron, Ms. Jennifer Denson, Mr. Kenny Nichols, Ms. Shirley Sessions,
here.
Mr. Taylor Atchison,
Here.
Mr. Matt Anderson, Mr. Nick Emberger, Ms. Susan Carley, Mr. Kirk Matei. We do have a quorum, and I'll entertain a motion to begin the meeting or to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll move on to agenda item number 1. It is a holdover. Location is 1408 St. Stephen's Road and 212 North Lafayette Street. It was a pre-UDC application. Is the applicant present? Mr. Byrd?
Gerald Byrd for the owner.
Yeah,
Sorry
good.
about that. Okay.
So this is a unique situation. Comments from staff on this property. Any comments before Mr. Byrd makes his presentation?
On Monday, the Board of Adjustment considered an off-site parking variance request for this property, and I was not present at the meeting, so I will turn the discussion over to Ms. York, but I understand that the board did deny the variance request.
Yes, so this site was before the Board of Adjustment on Monday. We have the bar lounge at the southeast corner here of St. Stephen's and Lafayette Street. They had an off-site parking variance granted in 2009 for this site. Without permits last year, they expanded that parking into this parcel here. And so they are trying to do a 1-lot sub and rezoning to allow that parking lot in that area. They had to amend the variance to allow the expansion of the parking area, and that is what the board denied on Monday's meeting. We did have a member of the community come that expressed concerns about the bar's development and operating in the area.
So on our report, it is recommended for tentative approval at R1. However, parking lot.
However,
So Mr. Byrd, go ahead.
well, of course, we applied for B2 zoning on this. Yes. With BOA approval, the existing parking lot could exist in an R1. But we would would like to continue with the B2 application it's got to be split. We've got to go back on the existing parking lot. They've got to do away with the connector aisle at the north end. So it would be a standalone parking for the bar, and the newer parking lot would be converted over to a commercial parking lot, which is allowed in B2, where they would rent spaces out, lease them weekly, daily. I ain't gonna fool with daily. It'll either be weekly or monthly with reserved spaces. The property east of what we're requesting, there is a vacant lot, and then there's apartments on the next lot. Both of those lots are owned by the same corporation. So it's not exactly like that's R1. Even though it's zoned R1, it's running apartments in it. The man that was at the meeting on Monday owns the property immediately adjoining on the north. He voiced concern about cars parking on that and trash on it, which I know how that is. Personally, I know how that is. Have that same problem at my office along the Halls Mill Road. But not having a parking lot is not going to eliminate his problem. If they had a parking lot, maybe they would be there. But anyway, we're asking for the B2 to make a commercial lot on the eastern half of the subject property. There's B2 on all four corners already. This would expand it over approximately another 50 feet to the east.
Mr. Bird, I know you're the surveying applicant, or here on behalf of the applicant. Are you aware if there's parking going on that, I mean, before the new parking lot was designed? Or is that?
No.
Okay.
It was there when I went out to survey it.
All right. So you're coming in after the fact?
After the fact.
Gotcha. Is there anyone else here to speak for this application?
Mr. Chairman, if you refer to the aerial photo behind you, that's from 2021, and that shows that where the house used to be had been torn down, and at that point it was just grassed. So at some point after 2021 is when the property was turned into the parking lot. And separately, I'd also like to note that a commercial parking lot could also be allowed in a B1 buffer business district, which is a lower zoning classification than a B2 district. So if the Planning Commission wanted to consider, instead of the entire property going B2, perhaps going to B1, that would be a lower increase in the rezoning than would B2.
Quick question. What did the BOA deny? What variance? The off-site parking approval for the lounge?
Correct. It was to amend the previously approved off-site parking variance. So they've got approval for the northeast corner that was already a parking lot. This has approvals, but they do not have approvals to expand onto the R1 portion.
And was the discussion in that if the Planning Commission rezones it, they would reconsider the variance?
No. They had some concerns about the operation of the bar and lounge in this area. The 2009 variance was brought about after an addition was done without approvals prior. So this is not their first attempt to asking for approvals after the fact.
And Mr. Bird, now you're saying that this parking lot in question is not to serve the bar, it's to lease on a weekly basis for parking spots?
If somebody rents a space, maybe they go to the bar, maybe they go to church, maybe they carpool downtown. Same way with the parking garage downtown. When they rent a space out on a monthly basis, nobody asks what you're going to do with it.
And it may be that there would be nothing to prevent the use of the parking area by the bar patrons. But one other thing to point out is that when this last went through a staff level review, I think in the 2009 variance perhaps, the parking that was on the site of the bar was supposed to be one-way, single direction with angled parking due to lack of width. Since that time, it got restriped and is made two-way with angled parking. So it's very substandard if you want to park on the site. And then in the new parking lot that got built over here, they have it as 90-degree two-way, but this width is only 48 feet, which is not sufficient to provide an 18-foot deep parking stall on either side, as well as the required 20 to 24-foot wide drive aisle. So it's substandard as well.
Now with the parking, and I didn't mention this Monday, the parking around the building, that was 2009, 14 years ago. If you go out there and look at the parking lot today, it looks like it's either been resurfaced or resealed. It's nice black, shiny black. And if they're short on parking places, I can believe they told them just, fit some parking places in and didn't have 2009 layout when they did it. Try to get as many parking places as they could.
So y'all are asking for B2, but B1 allows a commercial parking lot. Is that an acceptable change? Just asking. I mean, I don't see why y'all are asking. Why are you asking for B2?
Yeah, well,
because
the other parcel is already zone B2. The existing parking lot is zone B2, so we just asked for it to be B2. But I think, B1, if commercial parking lot will go in there, he probably would be okay with that.
Just getting refreshed, one last question. And the BOA suggested for the variance to stay on the one parking lot for that to serve as off-premise parking. The owner needed to separate the other parking lot. Is that what I heard, Mr.?
The board did not address what should be done with the unapproved parking lot.
But Mr. Byrd, you volunteered that y'all were going to separate the two lots where there wasn't a drive-through?
Well, it can be done. We've got to go back. He's got to go back to that original striping plan shown in 2009, which there was no connector between the two on it. Now, other than that, the rest of it looks about the same. I think the driveway up on Lafayette Street and one on St. Stephen's Road.
Mr. Byrd, my only comment would be, it looks like the whole thing is trying to turn into one big sheet of asphalt, so storm drainage will have to be dealt with, with this.
When
Saying it looks like the existing lot from that aerial photo, only about half of that is paved. So if this were to go through and get approved, the drawing we've got pictured here basically has the whole thing paved, very, very little green space. So either he's going to be doing some underground storage for his increased impervious runoff, or he's going to have to create some green space where he can have volume. So,
Well, Mr. Amberger, the parking lot's in place, and it was done without any permits, so there would have to be an after-the-fact permitting process to deal with the parking lot on the right side of the drawing that you're looking at.
all of that part of it, I'm saying, is that
There used to be a house here,
right?
and it was
Is that whole right side, is it all paved? It looks like a tree.
well, it's as depicted in the drawing you were looking at.
Okay.
Now, this site plan is accurate based on what Mr. Byrd provided to us.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. That's what's
Yeah.
physically.
That's what's there now.
Okay, I got you. Did that not have any stormwater improvements?
There were no permits for it, so no, probably not.
Okay, well that's going to have to be straightened out.
Yes.
Documents this.
The BOA denied the variance so that the site could comply with the 2009 approvals. They largely just had concerns over there wasn't a hardship associated with the expansion of the off-site parking because the site does have compliant parking without the parking lot expansion. And so because of that and the past behavior of the business, they had concerns.
Mr. Byrd, is there any kind of fence or buffer that is required between the northeast residential property and the parking lot? Do they have to have a fence or anything?
It's already there. There's
It is
6-foot
there.
privacy fence. And down the east line, I think, a ways. Yeah. Probably needs to extend out closer to St. Stephen's Road, maybe another 30 feet. And then there's a 3-foot fence.
Is there anyone else here to speak for this application? Anyone here to speak against this application? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Ms. Byrd, stick around for any questions during deliberation. Agenda item number 2, an extension at 4161 Halls Mill Road, Rams Head subdivision. Is the applicant present? Applicant is present, requesting a 1-year extension. Are you aware that more than likely a 1-year extension won't be approved after this one? So you got basically a year. All right. Any questions from commissioners on this extension application? Anyone else here to speak for this application? Anyone here to speak against it? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 3, new item. We have a recusal, Mr. Kenny Nichols. Application for a sidewalk waiver at 3949 Government Boulevard, Sawgrass Consulting. Request to waive sidewalk along Azalea Road and Government Boulevard. Is the applicant present? Do you guys have any comments or questions before we start asking questions on sidewalk waivers? Okay. Question for staff. Is there existing sidewalk structure?
There is an existing sidewalk on the development here immediately to the south on Azalea Road that terminates at about this point. The sidewalks to the east on the service road are more intermittent. A lot of this development is probably from the 60s and 70s. However, there is, I think, an auto parts store that was built on this property here within the last 10 years that did install a sidewalk. So as the area is being redeveloped, sidewalks are typically being put in as required by the regulations.
Any questions from commissioners on sidewalk waiver for staff or applicant who is present? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing session. We'll probably get to more discussion on that during deliberation. Move back to agenda item number 1. Mr. Nichols, you can come on back up for 1 and 2. Also, it's noted on agenda item 3, we do have a quorum, so we should be good there. Number 1, 1408 St. Stephen's Road and 212 North Lafayette Street, Napoleon Subdivision. Pre-UCD recommendation for R1. However, applicant is lobbying for B1 or B2, to be conformed with the B2 lot that's there. Any further discussion or questions from commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to make you aware of that the condition number 9 on this subdivision is in error and should be removed if considering for approval.
Thank you, Ms. York. Condition number 9 is in error and should be removed.
Question for staff, just on procedure. If this was approved, whether it was in B2 or B1, am I to understand the process for the owner is to submit a full set of construction drawings and permit this legally after the fact through a land disturbance permit?
That is what would have to be required. And I think at some point in my foggy memory of over the last year, maybe 2, engineering as well as planning as well as permitting became aware of the fact that the site had been developed with a parking lot. So the property owner would have to go through that process to get the appropriate approvals, which would include trees and landscaping as well.
And it would have to be a drawing, I assume, that meets standards. You mentioned the substandard parking.
Right. So it may end up that the design of the parking lot has to be changed, or they'd have to go back to the board to get a variance for the actual layout of the parking area.
And staff suggested it. I don't really understand the rezoning. The application is recommended for approval to R1. Is staff recommending this lot stay R1, or the entire parcel be subdivided together and all made R1?
So staff was going on the thinking that the variance may be approved. So if the variance was approved, then the site did not need commercial zoning, so that's what the R1 condition or suggestion was for. With the variance being denied, that changes things.
Is it currently one lot, or is it currently two lots?
2 lots.
Okay, so they are coming in for a subdivision for the plat to be signed, so that in itself is going to force the requirements to do a site plan, engineer drawing, and all that before the plat ever gets in, and get constructed, and get CO before the plat's ever signed.
Yeah, they got a lot of work ahead of them. I think it's reasonable to rezone this to R1, to B1, but I think they've got a long road to hoe after this meeting.
Mr. Byrd, is that your job to help them through that, I presume? Okay.
So I'll make that motion to approve the subdivision, removing item 9, and approve the rezoning to B1.
Second.
We have a motion to remove 9 and go to B1, and properly moved and seconded.
Real quick, I guess it should be noted that that would downzone their other parcel. That may not be acceptable.
That's correct. It would downzone the western property, yes. However, that should not affect the operation of the bar, which is across the
Well,
street.
and they have the option to kill it before it goes to city council for the rezoning. So, okay, it stands.
Motion and the second stands. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. B1, removing that condition 9. Agenda item number 2, extension at 4161 Halls Mill Road, Rams Head subdivision. The applicant is present and in agreement with 1-year extension with likely no further extensions. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for extension passes. Agenda item number 3. Mr. Nichols, if you'll just take a seat. We'll give you a proper welcome at the end of this meeting. Agenda item number 3, 3949 Government Boulevard, Sawgrass Consulting. It's a sidewalk waiver along Azalea Road and Government Boulevard. The applicant is present for any discussion or comments or questions from commissioners.
I do have one just general comment from the fellow commissioners. There's nothing on the topography that tells me that it can't be built, but I can see where they will probably be engaging in ALDOT, where they go from city right-of-way to ALDOT right-of-way. So it might be that if this is denied, that they need to construct a sidewalk on their parcel proper, not on the right-of-way, meaning ultimately a sidewalk easement granted as well. But it's just, there's a lot of foot traffic in the area. I'm trying to think, what is this facility? Is this a car? Yeah, this is a car wash. Okay.
It's a proposed car wash.
Never mind what else I was going to say, but I could just see a scenario when they get into their hard civil drawings that might have to encroach into their property, because they do kind of merge into ALDOT right away from city right away to some standpoint.
I make a motion to deny the waiver.
Second.
We have a motion to deny the sidewalk waiver. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have a question. Is there any pedestrian signal to cross Highway 90 at that intersection? I think it says no.
There is not any pedestrian features at the intersection. So from our perspective, since there isn't, and we would have to cross pedestrians to that little island there, we would only look for the sidewalk to go around the property and not actually guide anyone towards the intersection at this time.
We have a motion. It's been seconded. Any further discussion or questions? We'll call to vote. All in favor of denial of the sidewalk waiver?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a motion and 3 approvals for denial, and we have 4. We do not have is a majority rule on this one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have 4. Motion to deny the sidewalk waiver passes. That concludes the agenda items for business today. Mr. Nichols, first meeting, proper welcome, Mr. Kenny Nichols. Thanks for your participation in the City Planning Commission. Any further comments or questions from staff?
No, sir.
Meeting adjourned.